Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah Shaykhna. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Back to Basics.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Shaykhna, I hope you don't mind, but I want to extend our discussion from the previous episode about the intellect and the importance of the intellect. So we understood that there is a dire need to use the intellect when it comes to our aqidah and our understanding of our beliefs in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Of course.
But personally speaking, I understand or I see there are a lot of people preaching our aqidah and telling the youth there's no need to use your intellect, there's no need to think too deeply into certain matters or certain topics. This is the truth, or this is the rulings. Follow it and you should receive salvation in the hereafter. In your opinion, is there a danger in repressing your intellect? And if we did repress it or suppress our intellect, where would that path take us in coming generations?
So, this is a very good question. And I'm familiar with the fact that a lot of speakers do that. And dare I say, they'll definitely be held accountable for this, because human beings aren't sheep. And on the Day of Judgment, most speakers won't be responding for the mukallafin in their graves. Each person shall be brought to his own grave, and each person shall be asked about that which his hands brought and that which he believed. And so we definitely need to look into certain things. Is there a concept of not looking into certain things too deeply? I think that the answer to that definitely be yes. There's certain things which people become obsessed with. So for example, just to give you a very crude analogy, I've known people to have long and tedious debates as to whether or not the blood of the Ahlul Bayt would be najis, for example. Now, whilst I believe it's important to maybe give an answer to that for certain scholars, I wonder about the layperson that spends all of his time debating this particular topic, because does it avail him on the Day of Judgment? Like, why do you even need to have an answer in the first place?
What use or what benefit is that to me?
Exactly. I mean, on the Day of Judgment, do you think that the first thing is going to be asked of you in the grave when the angel rushes through is you're going to be gripped by the throat and asked, well, was the blood of the Ahlul Bayt najis? Or do they think that they're going to be asked about their ubudiyya towards Allah Azza wa Jal and their ibadah and how they acted as khulafa of Allah upon the earth? I think this is far more important. But nonetheless, one of the dangers we really see of this aspect is, let's look at the mentality of a Muslim mindset today. When we look at videos by Islamophobes, and sometimes not even Islamophobes, but people who are just sincerely questioning Islam, you see a bunch of Muslims, you'll see their profiles, they're not particularly religious, they might even have music videos up on their liked videos and what have you, and we're not judging anyone here, but they'll be like, oh, F you, and like, shut the hell up, you dirty kafir, like, and then insult the person. And it's this kind of defensive mentality, which I think is very much a result of a prevailing mindset, which refuses to look at the evidence for a religion. I personally find that when you're confident in what you believe, you don't need to get so defensive. You don't get so enraged by someone asking a question. You answer the question.
You're content with your beliefs.
You're content with your beliefs, and more importantly, you don't feel threatened by someone's doubt.
Yeah.
Answer the question. Don't. And I genuinely think that we live in such a disgusting herd mentality generation that these keyboard warriors who are around today, and also these young, it prevails in our community too. Like, even people I know personally, you'll see them going into the field of like trying to encourage the youth. And what will that be? It's just going to be launching into a giant attack on other people's beliefs. And it's like, well, thank you very much. Thank you for attacking other people's beliefs and showing why they're wrong, does that prove you right now? And I've never understood it. It's really just, I think it's one of the signs of the end times that people don't know how to discuss about what Ahlul Bayt had to offer. Really, were Ahlul Bayt merely, like, is all that Ahlul Bayt had to offer the fact that they're better than a false religion or a deviant sect? Or do they have a lot more to offer? And can my intellect genuinely appreciate what they had to offer? So let's look at some of the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt pertaining to the intellect and see what they've had to say about the intellect. In describing the intellect, Imam al-Sadiq says that it is ma abada bihi ar-Rahman wa aktasaba bihi al-Jannan. That the intellect is that by which ar-Rahman, the most merciful, is worshipped, and that by which the gardens of paradise are acquired. He's also said, إِذَا رَأَيْتُمْ رَجُلْ كَثِيرَ الصَّلَاةِ كَثِيرَ الصِّيَامِ فَلَا تَبَاهُ بِهِ حَتَّى تَنْظُرُوا كَيْفَ أَقْلِهِ. If you see a man who is much and heavy, as in he does much and increased and has a heavy amount of prayers, he does much fasting, don't think much about it. Check how his intellect is. Now, of course, I know that sometimes when we say such things, we have an ethical responsibility to just clarify what that means, because sometimes you have these leery teenagers who all of a sudden go down an extremist path and they start thinking that they know more than their parents and their grandparents, and they might be like, well, Jiddu, you might do lots of siyam and you might do lots of prayer, but you don't even know this aspect of religion. It's not for us to have this arrogance. There's many old people who, and people of a previous generation, who might not necessarily have looked into the aspects of evidence for religion, but that's just because they saw God all in front of them and they witnessed things which gave them this psychological certainty. Sometimes they have a level of iman which is greater than any of the young people today who do look into religion.
What could be said about those people? Those people, I've personally met them myself in third world countries, where people would refer to them as mukhlasin, or sincere people who follow the religion based on their instincts rather than their intellect.
Yes, people of fitra.
Fitra, yeah.
Such people, we have to understand that normally people of fitra, you see often when we're in a context today of discussing deviant beliefs, or discussing, for example, the differences between sects of Islam and how this sect says that and this sect says this. And I don't want to go into practical examples right now, because this show is about back to the basics of our aqidah, and not about other people's aqidah. I don't want to go down that route of showing that Ahlul Bayt don't follow this deviant sect and therefore very good. I want to show why Ahlul Bayt are intrinsically good themselves. Such people, often they don't have those. For example, they might pray in a certain way that is not mandated by Ahlul Bayt. But when you look at their beliefs, it's a pure belief. They don't believe that God is confined to a certain space. And they very much look at the world from that fitrah, which we believe Allah Azza wa Jalla has given everyone. Such a person is known in the rawayat as a mustadaf, someone that will be held accountable, but is recognized to be someone that didn't have access to the truth. And often they are from countries where education rates aren't that great, access to books isn't that great either. So we just look at them like that. We pray that Allah Azza wa Jalla has mercy upon us and has mercy upon them.
Inshallah. I've personally met someone recently, a 15, 16-year-old who lost his father in an explosion in his town. And that led to him having to go to work from a young age, being the eldest male in the household.
Yes.
He can't read, he can't write.
Yes.
And we sat down, and the call to adhan was being raised, and I said to him, "Are you coming to pray?" He said, I don't know how to pray. And he said to me, I don't think I should pray. I said to him, why? He said he heard a scholar saying on the minbar or in the pulpit that it is haram to act like you're praying if you don't know how to pray. So that scared him away from praying at all, even though he was, for example, completing the 80-kilometer walk, the pilgrimage to Karbala, and serving in the Mawaqib and being sincere in all his deeds and actions. But when it comes down to his ibadah, for example, he's scared off from attempting his ibadah.
And with good intentions, because of one thing that he heard.
Yeah. So he believed that if he does this prayer, for example, he's getting a sin rather than getting a benefit, because he doesn't know how to.
Truly, in such a situation, failure is people like myself and others who, in society, have failed to educate the masses in regards to what their taklif is. Someone like this young man who hasn't been taught how to pray, yet lives in a majority country where people know how to pray. This is shameful, and the shame is upon people like myself who failed to educate this young man in regards to what his taklif is. And, well, I can only pray that at some point someone teaches him how to pray and that he's able to start. Have you kept in contact with this young man?
No, not at all.
You met him on the walk?
I met him on the walk.
Okay.
But me and a group of friends, we did show him how to do wudu, for example, when he stood by us in the salah, and he came to us at the end. He said that was the first prayer he's ever done in his life, and he's around 16 years old.
May Allah reward you.
But it's just it's shocking to see.
May Allah guide us all as well.
Inshallah. But given the youth in the West, with their access to knowledge and the wealth of as you can say, teachings and narrations and everything around us, are we doing enough with the intellect that we're given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the way we were raised in this country with access to information? Are we doing enough, and are we serving our religion enough, as you can say?
I don't think we can ever serve our religion enough, to be honest with you. I think that more importantly, I don't think we can ever serve God enough, which is why the Imams, no matter how much they would do, we talked about the Imams and the identity that they give us, we would see that they feel the weight of this perceived taqsir, but they're never quite doing enough for Allah Azza wa Jal. And truly, how can you repay the one to whom all praise is due?
Yeah.
The one who's given you life and has given you everything that means anything to you, including the Ahlul Bayt. It's difficult, and truly we never can do enough. But then we need to ensure that just because we can't do enough doesn't mean that we need to sit back and say, well, because I can never do enough doesn't mean I shouldn't do anything.
Right.
We need to ensure that we prioritize what we spend our time doing. We need to ensure that we utilize the intellect. And one of the real dangers of suppressing it, I find, is that we're living a double life. We ourselves are worshipping a God that we have erected in our minds when we choose to suppress our intellect. A form of a divine dictator who feels threatened by us asking the most basic of questions. You see, Allah Azza wa Jal, He sent us the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He sent us the Hujjaj of Allah, namely Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam and his descendants. And one of the things that Amir al-Mu'mineen states is that there's three types of individuals. The one who worships Allah Azza wa Jal out of fear, and he states about this that this is the fear, this is the ibadah of who? Slave.
Yeah.
And he says that there's the one who worships Allah Azza wa Jal out of the intention of reward. And this is the ibadah of who? The businessman, because he wants to get that benefit.
Yeah.
And then you have the one who worships Allah Azza wa Jal out of the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal deserves to be worshipped. Now, when we look at that fact, we see that Amir al-Mu'mineen wants us to break beyond this lazy self, which is concerned solely with living in a cocoon, blackmailing himself when he has a certain question. When you don't understand something about the religion, I'm not advocating being a skeptic where we say that I'm going to leave a religion because I don't understand this tiny aspect of it. No, that's foolishness. But what we are advocating is that you take the time and you put that doubt to the side and you spend your time trying to resolve that doubt. Free yourself from psychological shackles. Don't just say, God said it, that settles it, I believe in it. Otherwise, you're no different from any other religion on the face of the planet. And what gives you the audacity to therefore claim that the path you're upon is right? You see, there's so many people out there that think that just by mocking the beliefs of others, they've somehow proved their beliefs right. This is absurd. This is cheap. And on the day of judgment, I believe that such people shall see that this fruitless effort of yours, this little cocoon, this little veil that you put around your eyes, didn't help you in any way, shape, or form. Because all you've done is make yourself feel better with this inferiority complex you have of needing to prove yourself better than everyone else.
Absolutely. But don't you feel like it's very hard to escape that realm of worshipping Allah out of fear for His punishment and out of desire for His rewards? How do you reach that state of being where you're content with whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for you, and you just see Him as someone worthy of worship, as you mentioned?
Well, no one said it would be easy, but one thing we are saying is that it's a level that you can reach, and it's a level that your Imam told you can reach. So either your Imam's a liar, wa na'udhu billah,
or you're just lazy.
Or not that you're just lazy, but you're not at that stage yet. Yeah.
What would it take to reach that stage? What is required from us?
To remember the bounties of Allah Azza wa Jal, to remember the favors of Allah Azza wa Jal upon yourself. When you remember everything that Allah Azza wa Jal has done for you, I know that everyone has a unique story in life, but there are certain things I look back and I wonder, subhanallah, ya Rabb, I was a young kid growing up in a very remote town of Scotland where all my friends were interested in tomfoolery and making money, and well, because my parents were from quite a well-to-do background, I was privileged in this life as well. And yet somehow you managed to set within me a trigger which triggered me to think about what is my purpose in life. And somehow you managed to awaken me to the beloved personalities of a religion which is so isolated and so much of a minority in this world that until today I'm in strict disbelief that I actually came to this particular path from a city that literally had nobody following that path at the time. And so when I remember these bounties, am I going to start thinking to myself, well, you know what, let me squeeze some more reward out of Allah Azza wa Jal, you know, like I'd like Jannah as well, that would be awesome. Or am I going to start thinking to myself, well, you know, this God that managed to guide me, I need to be afraid of him because he's this kind of dictator that is going to strike me down at any moment now. No. You start thinking of your Lord as the one who bestows upon you bounties, and you start wondering, why is it that I have this taqsir with my Lord?
Yeah, that also reminds me of the way I used to think of this religion, and I used to say to myself, even if all this turned out to be a huge fallacy and it was all one big scam or whatever you like to call it, I always see within myself that this religion has given me a way of life to become the best human being possible. I think that in itself,
inshallah ta'ala, if followed properly,
if followed
definitely,
properly,
definitely.
And
unfortunately, many of us don't follow it properly. And now, I know that you yourself might be thinking, Sheikh, now why are you emphasizing this so much? The reason I emphasize this so much is I've experienced a lot of human beings that have come into this religion, that have got religious, and have burnt out because they see the way that the community is. I don't want to be held responsible on the Day of Judgment for any viewer watching this show who happens to not be Shia or happens to be a non-religious Shia, saying that, wow, what Sheikh Yahya is saying resonates with me, let me go become religious. And because of the behavior of a community, they think, well, what Sheikh Yahya told me was a load of nonsense.
Yeah.
So I want them to understand that I'm not advocating right now that this is a perfect community. Far from it. This is a community that's very far from the values of the Ahlul Bayt, but we're all trying to collectively get there, inshallah ta'ala. And what we need to do is we need to have that understanding of the collective nature of walaya, where we don't just throw each other under the bus and think to ourselves, I'm going to get there myself because nobody else is trying to. No. We try and get each other up together, inshallah.
And inshallah, in future episodes, we'll discuss further about the connection between our aqidah and the community, and the importance of having a collective worship rather than just a solitude.
Definitely.
Form of worship. But we've run out of time for this episode, and inshallah, you'll join us in the future.
Inshallah.
Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thank you.